Good evening, and welcome to our very first joint Facebook Live with Beyond. It's very exciting to be here and to be using a new piece of technology as well, which we've had fun playing with over the last few days. So let's hope this is going to be a really great discussion and a really good session this evening. So we're very lucky to be joined by Jess from Beyond, we worked quite a lot together in the past, and I know that she's a fountain of all knowledge for Beyond. But also, we're very, very lucky to be joined by two of our oldest and very dear clients as well. Moving on from that sort of early sort of experience, when you decided to take the plunge and try out dynamic pricing, what was the biggest sort of initial surprise, or maybe even challenge that you faced in or experienced when you started exploring the concept?
We were finding it hugely time-consuming, concerned that we were missing potential opportunities, both in occupancy and both for maximising rates for our owners. And I did actually, prior to going with Beyond, try your nearest competitor. And I didn't find that particularly successful. I did that for probably the best part of the year, and I struggled with that, to be honest, and it didn't convince me. But then, again, as Paul was saying, when speaking to Robert about it and seeing Robert's presentation with what you guys are doing, it was, for us, it was a no-brainer at the end of the day, because it's looking at the market continually, and that takes that workload away from us. Doesn't mean the control's gone from us, which we'll come on to, but yeah, it was a huge time saver.
So can I just add one thing as well? That the biggest barrier to me actually doing it was because in SuperControl I used percentage pricing for short rates. And at the time that I set up dynamic pricing, there wasn't the ability to mirror that in Beyond pricing. But shortly afterwards, after raising my concerns with Robert about why I wasn't jumping on board, SuperControl actually enabled that facility.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Paula. Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, it's some daily pricing works better for some clients. The percentage-based model works better for others. I use daily pricing, and I find it really works well for me because I have B&B rooms and quite short stays, so that works. But no, absolutely, it's the flexibility is nice to be able to fit. You still get the benefit of data, but it fit it into what works best for your particular market. So yeah, absolutely.
Beyond, you set your minimum rates and you can set them seasonally. So you've got that safety net there, if you like, but there's also additional safety nets in SuperControl as well. So you've got within the price planner, it says do not take a booking below X amount of pounds. Yeah. So regardless of what's happening, of what the market is saying, you should maybe consider selling that. If that doesn't work for you as an owner, or we communicate with our clients and owners to say, where do you want your stop loss to be, if you like, we can set that additional safety net within SuperControl as well. So you've got two safety nets there where it will not sell below what you don't want it to sell at.
I think possibly it might be good to kind of explore a little bit what the kind of key advantages that our panelists have found in terms of, for example, saving time on admin with using Beyond. So I know you've touched a little bit on it, particularly Paula, your pre-Beyond sort of admin job. But for both of you, how have you found that kind of shift in terms of pricing admin whilst now using Beyond?
We have aspirations to continue growing the business, and we were very conscious of the fact that as we increased the numbers that we had in the way of owners and number of properties, we were finding it difficult to spend the amount of time that we needed to spend on looking at rates dynamically ourselves by doing by as I mentioned earlier on, by scraping the data ourselves or whatever. So we were getting to the stage with growth of what do we do about this? We're probably looking at employing a revenue manager. That can be quite costly and also difficult to find someone with that skill set, particularly up here in the Highlands. It would be someone remote. So I think that, with Beyond, that was the solution that we needed. The expertise was already there. The cost was equivalent or maybe less than we would pay for a revenue manager. So that allowed us to release time to focus on growing the business whilst ensuring that all existing owners properties were getting looked after and we were maximising the rates for them.
One thing that I think we really must cover as part of our myth busting is this this idea that beyond pricing will inflate your prices too much. Obviously, the aim is to get you more revenue, but we all, I'm sure, understand that there is a sort of limit to how much you can charge in good conscience. And we've heard these horror stories about £7,000 for 2 days in Cornwall. So was that something you were concerned about when you went into dynamic pricing? Overinflation of your rates?
Well, I also heard the stories about £7,000 for a week or 2 weeks in Cornwall, and that was quite alarming because I didn't actually own a property in Cornwall. But can you charge too much? Yeah, no, but I do take the point. But it is a value of money that. But I mean, the marketplace, again, people have choice at the end of the day. There's many properties out there. We've noticed that the lead times have shortened for the urbans, certainly, but where we're seeing the rural bookings coming in at probably 20-30% higher than we would expect, and some of these properties are performing really, really well, and it's been very surprising indeed. At the end of the day, these properties are in a marketplace where people have choice. So they read the reviews. The reviews are consistent. We've had no drop off in scoring and reviews. It's been fine. There's a choice at the end of the day. If they don't want to book, then there are other properties they can book at the end of the day. So I don't really have an issue with how dynamic is pricing, maybe 10, 20, 30%. Again, that's down to you as an owner. You choose how much you want to mark that up, 270 days ahead, 300 days ahead, or whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, on that topic, how do you have a regular sort of established clientele of repeat guests who will stay with you every year, possibly even in the same properties? And if so, how have you, Les, navigated that? And then I'll ask Paul, I think, the same thing, because I think it is a concern. It is one of those key things, is how do you manage keeping the repeat guests happy? Repeat guests are obviously a blessing in many ways, but is it something that we're getting too concerned about, our repeat guests? So how can you, what's your experience of that, Les?
Well, that's a marketing strategy at the end of the day, right? You need to detach that from any form of pricing, beyond pricing to a degree. So, I mean, how you deal with that? For example, say that beyond, you've set it at 270 days, it's 10% above. 300 days, 360 days, it's 20% above. You can always go to your repeats, and you should be communicating with them anyway if they're repeats, rather than letting them come to you and booking directly on the website, and give them the opportunity, should you wish to do that, at a 10 or 20% discount, taking it back to where the base price would have been anyway, which is what they would have paid. That's again, from us as an agency, that's a conversation with the owners. Do the owners want to do that? Don't they want to do that? How do they want to handle repeat guests? But those options are there at the end of the day. So just because dynamic is maximizing rates a year ahead doesn't mean to say that you have to sell to repeat guests at that rate. That's a choice again. It just depends how you want to chop it up, but it depends what you're running your business for. Are you running it to make money, or are you quite happy to have the level of business static through years, and you're quite happy that you've got 50% repeat guests? Again, that's a choice.
Absolutely. How about you, Paula? Do you have a good clientele of repeat guests who you've had to sort of navigate the change with as well?
Yeah, I do. And I think there's a danger that we will assume that guests think we are now too expensive, and that hasn't been my experience. Mm-hmm. I've had many repeat guests who have just gone ahead and booked online and have not mentioned the more expensive rates. So I've been very pleasantly surprised. You could easily feel guilty and think that you need to offer them a lower rate. And I just had a guest who left me, and she's just contacted me to come back at Christmas. So I've offered her a discount. Mm-hmm. But I guess the lesson I've learned is that I was just way too cheap in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, post-COVID, that's been, really one of the sort of silver linings of this whole period has been actually rethinking established patterns and actually embracing change on everybody's part. So for a lot of our clients who embraced Beyond right after reopening, everybody was raising their prices anyway because that was where the market was going. So it wasn't that unusual, and their repeat guests were happy to pay. So there's a lady who is a SuperControl client. She's got a single property, but she's really finding the benefit of Beyond, and a lot of her guests are repeat guests, often quite elderly. And she said that only one for the whole summer had queried why the price was different than the last 10 years he'd been staying. Everybody else just happily booked again, no questions asked. So yeah.
To that, I do want to touch on something Les said, that the idea of almost viewing repeat guests as a marketing cost or as a marketing expense. Because it's true, like you build this loyal brand, and if people come year after year, and to Paula's point, like maybe they've been paying too little the entire time. And perhaps if they're the sort of repeat guest that is frustrated by the price changing, you can, for want of a better term, like replace them with a new person who is going to become a repeat guest, who expects to pay at that price point and will continue to be an advocate for your property. So I know the repeat guest part is, everybody has to handle it the way that it works for their business. And I love the idea, Les, of, increasing rates into the future and offering repeat guests a discount. Another touch that some people use is, they pay the Beyond pricing price, but they leave a bottle of wine for a repeat guest, or, some like local biscuits or something, just to make them feel like that they're having a special experience. And if anybody else wants any other tips, we have, it has to work for your business, but there are lots of ways that you can choose to sort of attack this part of dynamic pricing with repeat guests.
I want to just move the discussion a little bit. We've had a really great question that was asked by somebody who's watching us on Facebook Live. And it's a two-part question. So I think if we look at the two different parts, that will help to unpack some more of our myths here. So the first part of it is, so this client, they have properties that are on an island. So what the question really is around, how does Beyond Pricing know that there's enough data to really support intelligent pricing, particularly for people who are maybe have a little bit more of an unusual location? And obviously, it might be really good to get your input as well, Paula and Les, about your kind of markets. Particularly Les, you work across multiple markets, whereas yours are all in one location, Paula. So let's talk a little bit about that if we can, just to kind of unpack that.
Yeah, I'll just jump in quickly, just from the technical side of view on how Beyond works. And we hand launch all of our markets, and we are very focused on what constitutes a statistically significant number of properties in an area. And so that can vary. In New York, for example, it might be, 4 city blocks. And then in rural Scotland, it might be several square kilometres. So what we would do on an island, for example, is take a look at the properties that are in the surrounding area. And if there weren't enough there that we found statistically significant, we wouldn't price that area. So that's kind of how we approach it with like clustering the data at Beyond. But I'd love Paula or Les to jump into.
Well, I think that the way that Beyond works, linking through your Airbnb account, is genius, because obviously there are so many properties on Airbnb compared to any other platform. It's probably the biggest. I don't know if it's the biggest, Airbnb.com. But so, I mean, there are properties on Airbnb in my area that I have no idea are there. I couldn't sit there and troll through all the properties. So there's a huge amount of data out there. And it's amazing how Beyond manages to collate all the data and then feed that data back into the system to give me the prices that I'm getting. So whatever they're doing, it's working, and I'm very happy with it.
So I have another question that's come through for us, and it's something I wanted to cover anyway, and that's to do with property types. So, and I think both Paula and Les could probably talk to this as well. How does Beyond deal with larger properties, and also how does it deal with properties of different quality standards? So a luxury versus a more basic property, for example, even if they have the same occupancy. So I don't know if you want to speak briefly to that, Jess, and then we can ask for experience from Les and Paula.
Yeah, well, actually, can I flip that twice? Is that okay? I'd love to hear how Les and Paula talk about
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely, yeah.
How about you, Paula?
Okay, well, I mean, I only have one type of although I have different sizes within my complex, so my smallest property is 1 bedroom, my largest property is 4 bedrooms and sleeps 8. The standard of them is all the same. So once I've decided my base price based on the size of the property, Beyond Pricing is doing the rest for me. So it's not really a huge amount of variance for me. It's probably more relevant to Les because he has different types of properties for different owners and different levels of standard.
Great point. How about you, Les?
Yeah, I don't know, Paula, because I mean, you mentioned that you get the price, you know where the base price, roughly where you want the base price to be. We're back to control again. It's not the magic computers making all the decisions here. It's you set the base price because you know what the base price should be from that property. So we might have a 2-bedroomed apartments in Inverness that's high end and there's double the money from one that's not budget, but you know, I'm not trying to downplay any of the properties by any means, but you've got 2 very different properties, but you know the base, but you know where that property should be priced at anyway. So that's about getting the base price right to start with, and then once you've and Beyond will help you with that, and then once you've done that, you just need to keep an eye on it for the first short while to make sure Beyond, I haven't mentioned getting into the sort of technicalities of health scores and such like, but the software has a health score, so you can see how it's tracking 30 days out, 90 days out, whether you're hitting the minimums. So you can see those key data points, and that allows you, and Beyond will help you with that, to see is that base price correct, and once you've tweaked it to get it where it needs to be, it's pretty much there ongoing, just needs the odd bit of tweaking.
There's one last thing I wanted to ask both of you for your experience on, and that's booking patterns. Since you started using Beyond, have you noticed any kind of change in booking patterns across some or all of your properties? Has your lead time shortened, or what's your experience been with that?
Okay, well, definitely during July and August, for some reason this year, I had a lot of short bookings. My minimum stay in July and August is 3 nights. I've actually increased it to 4 nights for next year because it was just with COVID and the lack of availability of staff, it just was a massive headache. I just found it impossible to get staff, and although the revenue was very welcome, the flip side of that was that it was just a nightmare trying to get the properties cleaned to the standard that I wanted them cleaned. And lead time is definitely shorter, and I don't know whether that's a general trend or whether that's because of Beyond Pricing. I'm not sure, or whether that's just the market at the moment.
And Les?
That's a difficult question because each year you think, right, what's the strategy here? And you're trying to compare one year against, and trying to compare what's just happened over the last 18 months or 2 years and say, well, is that because of what we were doing with Beyond? I don't know, because it's been very, very fluid at the end of the day. One thing I have noticed about the booking patterns is, as Paula said, is the lead times are either very short or massively long. There doesn't seem to be any middle ground where we're sitting at the moment. We've got bookings that are coming in for July, August, September, October next year, and quite a lot of them are coming in, and it's been quite surprising at some of the rates that have been coming in, which has been interesting and good. Or we've got the other side of the coin, whereas somebody wants to arrive tomorrow or the day after, and there doesn't seem to be any middle ground at the moment.
What I would like to do is I'd like to just have one last question for Paula and Les. And that is, what would be your top #1 reason for exploring Beyond? So I know for me, it's been actually revenue. It's been really understanding what I should be charging my guests and realizing that I was far too cheap before. So for me, it's been the additional revenue that it's got me. But what would each of you say was your top reason? Maybe it's saving time, maybe it's making your life easier. What would be your top #1 reason why you would recommend Beyond to somebody else in your position? So Paula first, what would yours be?
Well, like you, Tobias, it's definitely a couple of things, I guess. Revenue massively, because I know that looking through the statistics that I can drill down to in SuperControl, that my average daily rate has gone up by 48%, which is phenomenal.
Wow, wonderful.
So I was definitely undercharging. And then like the other side of that is, why am I trying to crack a nut when there's an algorithm that does it much better? And it just allows me to spend my time looking after my guests and hopefully creating the experience that is what they're paying for at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paula. That's wonderful. And how about you, Les? What's your number one?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Time, and we're an agency, so we work for our owners. So it's making sure that we're doing the best job we can for our owners by maximising the revenue. And ultimately, we're an agency on commission, so we get more commission as well. So everybody's happy. But yeah, customer retention for us as well, as we grow the business, we want to keep our clients happy, more revenue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's really great. Well, thank you so much for being here this evening and taking time out of your busy schedules to share your experiences. And thank you so much as well, Jess. It's been a great benefit, as always, to have you here with your smile and your cheery disposition and sharing your knowledge and expertise too. I'll leave the last word to you, Jess.
Yeah, a big thank you to you, Tobias, and really to the whole SuperControl community. You know, it's been such a joy to work with alongside and get to know a lot more of you over the last year in particular. And I'm really excited to see what comes next.
Thanks. Well, have a great evening, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.